Welcome to Epoch News. I'm Tatiana Darzi. Firing pepper pellets and clearing out protesters, Hong Kong authorities arrested more than 200 people during a pro-democracy protests after a sing-along demonstration at a shopping mall. Hundreds of riot police were deployed to disperse protesters across the city last Sunday as protesters chanted for freedom and held up banners calling for a revolution. It's one of the first signs of civil unrest returning to Hong Kong, which has largely been put on hold since January under social distancing restrictions. Enoch Cha, a 40-year-old pro-democracy protester, said, "The government has imposed restrictions on gatherings and turned it into a crackdown on freedom of assembly, not only for the rights of citizens, but also for other religious activities. I think it's a gross violation of human rights." Police told protesters they were staging an illegal assembly, violating social distancing measures that ban gatherings of more than 8 people. The Hong Kong Journalists Association said some members of the press were prevented from filming and some journalists were not allowed to receive immediate treatment when pepper sprayed. 18 people were taken to the hospital. The recent arrest of democracy activists has revived the pro-democracy movement as the city begins easing its social distancing restrictions. On Friday, May 8, rival lawmakers scuffled in Hong Kong's legislature. The city is gearing up for further protests as Hong Kong approaches the anniversary of its handover from British to Chinese rule on July 1st. A 13-year-old student reporter was detained by police in Hong Kong. When armed police surrounded the young reporter, they asked for his age and then told him he was working illegally. The boy explained that he was volunteering as a student reporter. Police later threatened to subpoena his mother if they saw him again at a demonstration.
Hong Kong netizens launched Mother's Day flash mob rallies on May 10th, but they were chased away by the Hong Kong riot police. A 13-year-old student reporter, Lu, from Student Depth Media was surrounded by the police and later was taken to the police station and detained more than an hour before being released. A Hong Kong teacher posted an open letter on Facebook applauding the student Lu for being brave and upright, and said that the world will become broader and better because of his efforts to seek the truth. Student Lu presented his press badge when surrounded by a number of armed police officers. The Hong Kong police rebuked him for illegal child labor and being a thug, but Lu stated that he wasn't getting paid and was volunteering as a student reporter. Some police officers laughed at his height and tried to take him away, but were stopped by other officers. Later, Lu was interrogated by the police and arrested with another female reporter. The social workers said that both of them are underage and should be accompanied by social workers to the police station, but this was ignored by the police. Lu was released after being detained for more than an hour. Lu's mother said she knew that her son went out for an interview and she would watch the live broadcast, hoping to let him learn and grow by participating in the big events. However, the police threatened that if they see Lu next time at a demonstration, they would issue subpoenas against his mother in the name of protecting children, and she will be held criminally responsible for not protecting her underage son. A Hong Kong female teacher posted that being a student reporter, you wear a reflective vest as required, present your press badge, and answer the police's questions to reveal your identity without raising your voice. In this era where everything seems to be covered up and procedures are ignored, these seemingly ordinary actions make you look extremely frank and upright. She also wrote, "Please continue to study hard, think about those difficult affairs with your heart, even if you might not be able to find the answer. But the world will definitely become better and more beautiful because of your continuous exploration, pondering, and truth-seeking journey."
Joshua Philipp is an award-winning investigative reporter with the Epoch Times and host of the China Report and Crossroads. He has over a decade of experience investigating the Chinese Communist Party, subversion, and related topics, giving him a unique insight into the threat posed by the CCP and the overall global political landscape. Joshua, thank you for joining me.
Hey, it's a real pleasure being here. Thanks.
We know that before the spread of the CCP virus, there had been months of protests in Hong Kong. Now, these protests have resumed and activities are calling for a revolution. Can you tell us more about why these protests are taking place, how the CCP is involved, and why is this event so important for our viewers to learn from?
The Chinese Communist Party lied to Hong Kong. They deceived the people of Hong Kong. When the British government handed over Hong Kong to China, to the Chinese regime, it was under the agreement that they would have one country, two systems, that Hong Kong would remain free for at least 50 years. And the Chinese regime has gone back on that deal. They've begun pushing their laws into Hong Kong. They've begun pushing their different forms of law enforcement into Hong Kong. They've subverted the government to a large extent in Hong Kong. The people in Hong Kong saw this happening. A new law was getting passed, and this law would have allowed the Chinese regime to extradite people in Hong Kong back to China, basically make it the law of the land. Anything the Chinese Communist Party deems illegal could be illegal in Hong Kong. For example, if you support democracy, you could face a trial in mainland China. If you support religions banned by the Chinese regime, such as house Christians, you could be sent back to mainland China for trial. The Hong Kong people went out on the street and protested, 2 million people. And of course, the Chinese regime tried stopping this, the Hong Kong government tried stopping it, and there was no sign of stopping until this virus hit, and now they've implemented martial law under the guise of this lockdown. And so the people of Hong Kong are still protesting to an extent, and the local authorities there are trying to stop this.
We just saw that a 13-year-old was detained by police for volunteering as a student reporter. The young reporter said that, quote, reporters are treated like this by the police at the demonstrations. What can you tell us about freedom of the press in Hong Kong's one country, two systems?
Hong Kong is supposed to have these same basic protections of free speech and free assembly and the freedom of the press as the United States and many other free countries. And under the Chinese Communist Party, you don't have these kinds of freedoms. The reporter is right that right now, the state that Hong Kong is in, these rights are being trampled on. And the arrest of that individual only validates the reasoning for these Hong Kong protesters going on the street and doing what they're doing.
I see. Thank you so much, Joshua. It was great having you on. Hopefully you can come back in the future to give us some more news and updates. Thank you for joining me.
It'd be my pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. To find Joshua on the China Report and on Crossroads, you can visit the links listed below this video. For nearly 30 days, Taiwan has reported no new cases of the CCP virus, and in Hong Kong, there was one new case reported on May 12. But before that, they went over 20 days without any new cases of infection. This is remarkable considering their proximity to mainland China and the amount of travel that takes place between these countries and from the people from the mainland.
Since April 13th, there have been no new confirmed local CCP virus cases in Taiwan. Hong Kong reported no new confirmed virus cases since April 19th, ending on May 12th with one new case reported. The development of the epidemic in Taiwan and in Hong Kong have presented a different picture than that of other affected countries and regions in the world. With no new confirmed cases for 30 days in Taiwan, the Central Epidemic Command Center, CECC, has announced that it will look into allowing anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 spectators to watch the Chinese Professional Baseball League Games, CPBL. The commander of CECC, Chen Shizhong, said,
For the first time, the CPBL opened its game to spectators. Several of us went there to participate in such a festive event. As a great job had been done in maintaining order, we could discuss if the number of attendees should be relaxed to 2,000. It is really healthy for people to be dancing out there, and it is really a positive thing for society.
CECC expert Zhang Shangchun expressed that if no new cases have been reported within 2 quarantine periods, i.e. within 28 days, then from a public health standpoint, the Taiwanese community is quite safe. There are currently 440 confirmed cases and 7 deaths reported in Taiwan. Chen Shizhong warned that wearing masks, washing hands, and social distancing are the most basic lines of defense, and these regulations will not be easily abandoned unless considerable scientific breakthroughs have been made. In Hong Kong, as of May 13th, there were a total of 1,048 confirmed cases and 4 deaths reported. 3 new deaths recently reported were all imported, 2 of which were patients returning to Hong Kong from Pakistan and 1 from the UK.
Lawyers in China who represent victims of human rights abuses are often subject to abuse at the hands of the CCP themselves. For representing Falun Gong practitioners, Christians, and other people of faith, these lawyers have lost their licenses to practice, been abducted or detained, and suffered torture themselves.
On April 26th, the China Human Rights Lawyers Group issued a statement to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the CCP stripping Tang Jitian and Liu Wei of their lawyer licenses. The group also called on the CCP to comply with international conventions as well as the Constitution to protect human and lawyers' rights. In the statement, the Chinese Human Rights Lawyers Group stated that the CCP launched revised laws in 2010 and wrongfully revoked Liu Wei and Tang Jitian's licenses. The CCP authorities demonstrated their arrogance by abusing power and persecuting human rights lawyers. The CCP's suppression of human rights lawyers can be traced back before 2010. One notable case is Gao Zhisheng, a well-known human rights lawyer whose license was stripped by the CCP and was secretly abducted and tortured in 2006 for representing Falun Gong practitioners, Christians, and other faith groups. Human rights lawyer Wang Youhang from Dalian was also secretly detained in July 2009 for representing a Falun Gong case. He was then illegally sentenced to 7 years, the heaviest among all human rights lawyers at the time. He was tortured while imprisoned. Lawyer Peng Yongfeng breaks down the deeper reasons behind the CCP's mass persecution of human rights lawyers.
What are their deeper reasons? For these persecuted groups, especially the cruel persecution of Falun Gong practitioners, every case has a bloody story behind it. The CCP did not want these stories to be exposed. With all these human rights lawyers involved in cases like these, it is in fact further exposing the CCP's brutality. The CCP is afraid of more human rights lawyers coming forth to provide legal assistance to Falun Gong practitioners. What it didn't expect is that the suppression seems useless. Instead, it encourages more human rights lawyers to come forward.
After 2010, as human rights lawyers persisted in human rights cases, their situation worsened continuously. In 2015, the 709 crackdown targeting them had reached a peak. The 709 crackdown started with petitioner Xu Chunhe, who was shot cruelly in front of his mother and children. The incident triggered public anger. Human rights lawyers in China issued their largest joint statement in history, with 660 signatures in support of Xu. More than 20 human rights lawyers who supported Xu were then detained by the police, leading to a mass arrest. Beginning on July 9, 2015, the 709 crackdown involved the CCP's police rounding up, interrogating, and arresting about 300 human rights lawyers, legal assistants, and activists. Up to 23 provinces were involved across the country. Dr. Zhao Zhongyuan met many lawyers because of his participation in human rights activities. He said even before the 709 crackdown, the CCP's suppression of the human rights movement had already begun, with many well-known human rights lawyers being arrested.
Before 709, there was the Jian Sanjiang incident. I remember 4 lawyers, including Jiang Tianyong, Tang Jitian, Wang Chen, and Zhang Junjie, went to Jian Sanjiang prison in Heilongjiang province to rescue Falun Gong practitioners detained there. The CCP then arrested these lawyers. At that time, they aroused solidarity from all over the country, and the police later had to release them. However, they were already tortured inside.
Zhao Zhongyuan said that the CCP's 709 persecution of lawyers included torture, force-feeding unknown drugs, restrictions on freedom, illegally revoking lawyers' licenses, and restrictions on travel.
These people have more than 20 broken ribs. 24, I think. Actually, more than that. Tang Jitian himself has more than 20 broken ribs. His sternum, the front and the back, and his ribs were all broken. The x-ray from when they were under police surveillance showed nothing wrong. They came out and took other exams. The result showed all bones were broken.
The CCP threatened hospitals to not give Tang Jitian treatment. With a friend's help, he was sent to Zhao Zhongyuan's clinic to receive treatment. He recovered gradually after half a year. Through treating these human rights lawyers, Zhao Zhongyuan heard their experiences of the CCP's persecution. These lawyers' integrity moved Zhao, and he also deeply understood the CCP's evil. Zhao Zhongyuan said many human rights lawyers' licenses were revoked by the CCP, that they could not make a living and their families were affected, yet they still persisted on speaking out, and he feels their actions are very admirable. He called on the public's attention to help these lawyers, as they are the backbone of the country. Through 2018 to 2019, the CCP revoked a large number of human rights lawyers' licenses, including Beijing lawyers Yu Wensheng, Xie Yanyi, and Li Heping, Guangdong lawyer Sui Muqing, Hunan lawyer Wen Donghai, and more. There are also a number of human rights lawyers still imprisoned, illegally incarcerated, and some were forced to go into exile. Since 2010, human rights lawyers have suffered 10 years of hardship. China human rights lawyers stated, "Faced with a decade of darkness, Chinese human rights lawyers have not given up their pursuit in love of freedom, democracy, and constitutional rights. Our belief in human rights protection in a China with the rule of law is unshakable. We will stand firm and continue to fight on this land we love. We will continue to be on the front lines of defending human rights, safeguarding the rule of law. For social fairness and justice, we will continue to cry and call for alliance."
Hundreds of new homeowners want to cancel their sales contracts after learning that their homes were used as quarantine sites without their consent during the peak of the CCP virus pandemic. Over 40 police officers arrived to break up the protest.
Hundreds of property owners who purchased new homes at the renowned Athletes Village in Wuhan organized a protest in front of the sales office on May 2nd, demanding to cancel their contracts after learning that their homes were used as quarantine sites during the peak of the CCP virus outbreak without their consent. More than 40 policemen came to break up the protest. One person was injured and 10 were arrested. The 2019 Military World Games were held in Wuhan from October 18th to the 27th, 2019. The Athletes Village, where athletes stayed during the Games, appeared on Chinese state TV several times and attracted public attention for the amenities it offered. After the Games, China Poly Group Corporation was hired as a sales agency to sell these homes. Buyers are furious that the homes they bought were used as quarantine sites without their approval and are demanding to cancel their purchase contract.
How many people went to the sales office today? What was the situation?
We arrived around 10 a.m. today. I heard many buyers are not local. Almost all local buyers, about 200 people, gathered together in front of the sales office. There were even seniors, a pregnant woman, and someone who just had the surgery. We demanded that the contracts be canceled, because after the properties were in contract, the authorities built the Lei Shengshan hospital in close proximity. It makes us panic, as even medical experts are uncertain as to when the pandemic will come to an end.
Are there any hospital beds inside the property? Did they use the homes as a makeshift hospital?
The homes were used as a quarantine site. Based on the official response to address our inquiry, they were used to quarantine those medics from other regions before they left Wuhan. However, some buyers learned that healed patients were also quarantined here.
Did you mean that when cured patients were released from the makeshift hospitals, they needed to undergo quarantine and the houses you bought were used to house these patients?
Yes, exactly. Also, some people who are not locals were stranded in Wuhan during the lockdown. a couple buyers have evidence that the developer rented out the homes to this group of people at a rate of 100 yuan, $14.14 USD per day.
Did you know how many people live there, including medical staff and recovered patients?
We learned from state media that 3,000 hospital beds were set up in the athletes' village. There are some buyers who live close by. After they read the news, they used the binoculars to check the situation there. They found out that many rooms had lights on at night. It really angered all of us. When the authorities decided to build the Leishengshan Hospital 20 to 30 meters, 66 to 94 feet away from the athletes' village, they should have notified the property owners first.
How many people have bought homes here?
As far as I know, more than 1,000 families.
Were all of these more than 1,000 homes used as quarantine sites?
China Police said not all of them, but we have collected some evidence which suggests all had been occupied. For example, some buyers found bloodstains inside the home. We have taken pictures.
Will all the homes be ready for moving in when you get the keys on June 30th?
Yes, they are all ready for occupation, as they have been used for the athletes of World Military Games.
How many were arrested during the protest?
As far as I know, about 10. One of them was injured.
By the police? How many police came?
I think there were 40 to 50 police in uniforms. There were also plainclothes.
How did that person get injured? How did the confrontation start?
We waited outside the sales office for a whole morning, but no one from China Poly Group was willing to communicate with us. It was very hot outside, and there were women and children among us. We asked them to allow seniors, women, and children to go inside and take a rest, and some of us also needed to use the restroom, but they refused. It was so inhumane. We were outraged.
Many experts say there will be a second wave of the pandemic.
Yes, we heard that it may hit us again in October. How do we dare to live in houses next to Leishengshan? China Poly is a large-scale state-run enterprise, but they are not sharing any burden for us, and we have to suffer all the disastrous consequences from the pandemic.
What is the capacity of Leishengshan Hospital?
I think it can take several thousand patients. It is for severely ill patients. That's why it is really a huge concern for us property owners.
Have those 10 people been released?
No, we are demanding to have them released.
Was the person injured seriously?
The 120 ambulance took him away. Among the 10 people who were arrested, one just had a cardiac bypass surgery, one is a senior, and one is in poor health. We are very worried about them. We hope they can be released soon, especially the person who just had cardiac surgery. We're very worried that he may run into some problem.
The interview was conducted on May 2nd by Gu Xiaohua of the Chinese language Epoch Times.
The following charts will show you the most recent numbers regarding the CCP virus pandemic. The Chinese Communist Party's cover-up led up to a pandemic that now threatens the lives of people around the globe. With over 4.3 million people infected, China is still defensive about independent international inquiry into the origin and spread of the CCP virus. The Epoch Times has initiated a global Sign the Petition campaign calling for investigating, condemning, and rejecting the CCP. We believe that investigating and exposing the truth is the only way that we can remain safe. Let's take action. Sign the petition at ccpvirustruth.com. That's all for today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this program with friends and family to keep them informed about the latest news and updates. Thank you for joining me. See you next time.